Hello students, today we are going to continue with the chapter The Enemy of class 12. Those who did not see the first part of the video, please go and see, then only you will be able to understand this part, and others, let's start with the video. What is he? Hannah whispered. There is something about him that looks American, Sadao said. He took up the battered cap. Battered means torn and worn out. Yes, there, almost gone, was the faint lettering. A sailor, he said, from an American warship. He spelled it out. U.S. Navy. The man was a prisoner of war. Prisoner of war means a person captured by enemy in war. So Hannah was inquisitive as she asked about the man's identity. Sadao replied that he appeared to be an American. He picked up the torn cap and read the words written on it, which were slightly visible. He said that the man was a sailor from an American warship and read out the words U.S. Navy written on the cap. They concluded that the man had been taken into captivity during the war. He has escaped, Hannah cried softly, and that is why he is wounded in the back, Sadao agreed. So Sadao and Hannah, they discussed that the man had tried to escape from the prison and had been shot in the back. They hesitated, looking at each other. Then Hannah said with resolution, Come, are we able to put him back into the sea? Now, they were not able to gather the courage to throw him into the sea. Hannah called upon Sadao with firmness. She asked him if he was ready to put him into the sea. If I am able, are you? Sadao asked. No, Hannah said, but if you can do it alone. So Sadao told her that he was able to do so and asked that did Hannah have the courage for it. Hannah replied in the negative and added that if he could not do it by himself, then she had to help him. Sadao hesitated again. The strange thing is, he said that if the man were whole, I could turn him over to the police without difficulty. I care nothing for him. He is my enemy. All Americans are my enemy. And he is only a common fellow. You see how foolish his face is. But since he is wounded, so Sadao hesitated again, means he was reluctant in throwing the man into the sea. He reasoned that if the man was well, it says no, man were whole, means man was well, he was not wounded, then he would have handed him over to the police without any hesitation. He further added that he was not concerned about the man and considered him to be an enemy as he was an American. He commented that the injured man was a common man as his face looked as if he was a foolish person. He wanted to say that he was not bothered about the injured man, but his only concern was that he was wounded. You also cannot throw him back to the sea, Hannah said. Then there is only one thing to do. We must carry him into the house. So Hannah said that if he could not throw him into the sea, then the second option was to carry him home. But the servants, Sadao inquired. So Sadao, he was concerned that the servants would object as they would shelter an enemy. We must simply tell them that we intend to give him to the police, as indeed we must, Sadao. We must think of the children and your position. It would endanger all of us if we did not give this man over as a prisoner of war. Certainly, Sadao agreed. I would not think of doing anything else. So, endanger means put at risk. So Hannah said that they would tell servants that they intended to hand him over to the police once he recovered. She told him that they must do that. She added that they must consider their children's future and Sadao's position. If they did not hand over a prisoner of war to the police, they would be in danger. Sadao replied that certainly he would do so and he did not think of doing anything else. Thus, agreed together, they lifted the man. He was very light like a fowl. Fowl means cock, or you can say means cock or hen, that had been half starved for a long time until it is only feathers and skeleton, so his arms hanging. They carried him up to the steps and into the side door of the house. This door opened into a passage, and down the passage they carried the man towards an empty bedroom. So Sadao and Hannah, they lifted the injured man into the house. He was very light. The writer compares his weight to that of a hen that has not been fed for a long time, and its body loses flesh and reduces into mere feathers and skeleton. The man's arms were hanging, and the duo carried him up the steps into the side door of the house. The door opened into a passage, and they went down the passage towards an empty bedroom. It had been the bedroom of Sadao's father, and since his death, it had not been used. So, the bedroom, it belonged to Sadao's father, and that had not been used after his death. They laid the man on the deeply matted floor. Everything here had been Japanese to please the old man, who would never in his own home sit on a chair or sleep in a foreign bed. So the injured man, he was laid on the thick mat on the floor. The writer here describes the room, that everything in the room was Japanese, as Sadao's father disliked foreign things. Hannah went to the wall cupboards and slid back a door and took out a soft quilt. She hesitated in giving that quilt. Why? Because the quilt was covered with flowered silk and the lining was pure white silk. So Hannah, she went up to the cupboard in the wall and took a soft quilt. She resisted putting it on the injured man. The quilt was made of silk, it had flowery print on it, and the lining was made of pure white silk. He is so dirty, she murmured in distress, in sorrow and sadness. Yes, he had better be washed, Sadao agreed. If you will fetch hot water, I will wash him. So Hannah, she was sad and spoke slowly that the man was very dirty. Sadao said that the man had to be washed. Sadao asked Hannah to get hot water so that he could wash the man. I cannot bear for you to touch him, she said. We shall have to tell the servants he is here. I will tell Yumi now. She can leave the children for a few minutes and she can wash him. So Hannah did not want that Sadao should touch the man. She said that they would ask the servant to wash the injured man. She would call Yumi to leave attending the children for a few minutes and wash him. Sadao considered a moment. Let it be so, he agreed. You tell Yumi, and I will tell the others. But the utter pallor means pale appearance, of the man's unconscious face, talking about the prisoner of war, moved him first to stoop, means to bend forward, and feel his pulse. It was faint, but it was there. He put his hand against the man's cold breast. The heart too was yet alive. So Sadao, he thought for a moment and then agreed with Hannah. He asked her to call Yumi while he would call the other servants. Before he could go out, he saw the injured man's face. It was so pale that he stopped. He bent forward and felt his heartbeat to see if he was alive. The heartbeat was very faint, but it was there. Then Sadao placed his hand on the man's heart to feel it. It was also beating. Sadao concluded thus that the injured man was alive. He will die unless he is operated upon, Sadao said, considering. The question is whether he will not die anyway. So Sadao here comments that if the man was not operated upon, he would die. He added that even he was not operated upon and saved, he would die at the hands of the Japanese army. So either ways, he would die. He has no chance to live. If he is not operated, then also he will die without any medical care. He is going to die. And if he is saved, then he would be handed over to the Japanese army and they will kill him. So ultimately he has to die. Hannah cried out in fear, "Don't try to save him. What if he should live?" So Hannah screamed with fear and asked Sadao not to save the man. She feared that if he lived, they would be in danger. "What if he should die?" Sadao replied. He stood gazing down at the motionless man. This man must have extraordinary vitality, means strength, stamina, vigor, or he would have been dead by now. So now Sadao, he questioned that what would be the implications if the man died. He looked down towards the injured man and wondered that he had a lot of energy which had kept him alive through such torture. But then he was very young, perhaps not yet 25. "You mean die from the operation?" Hannah asked. "Yes," Sadao said. So Sadao countered his thought with the fact that the man was very young. He seemed to be 25 years of age, and at that age, people do have a lot of energy. Hannah asked him that did he mean the man could die during the operation? Sadao confirmed her question. Means he said yes, that there is possibility that he could die during the operation. Hannah considered this doubtfully, and when she did not answer Sadao turned away. At any rate, something must be done with him, he said, and first he must be washed. Now, Hannah was pondering over this possibility, and as she was taking time to reply, Sadao lived. So what thought she was thinking that during operation also the man could die, but sh- uh, before giving any reply to her husband, he left. He said that something had to be done with the injured man, irrespective of the result, and first thing was to wash him. He went quickly out of the room, and Hannah came behind him. She did not wish to be left alone with the white man. He was the first she had seen since she left America, and now he seemed to have nothing to do with those whom she had known there. Here he was her enemy, a menace, living or dead. Menace means threat, a danger. Whether living or dead, this person was a threat to her family. So, as Dr. Sadao said, that the first thing was to wash him, and as he walked out of the room, Hannah followed him. She did not want to remain in the room alone with the white skinned man. Since she had left America, he was the first white man she had seen. She had no contact with the Americans whom she had met as they were her enemies. This injured man was also an enemy and was a threat to them. She turned to the nursery and called Yumi. Nursery is a room in a house for the special use of young children. So she turned to the children's room and called out to Yumi. But the children heard her voice and she had to go in for a moment and smile at them and play with the baby boy, now nearly 3 months old. So she had a son who was just 3 months old. So as the children they heard her voice, she went inside, smiled at them and played with her 3 month old son. Over the baby's soft black hair, she motioned with her mouth, Yumi, come with me. So, as she held the baby who had soft black hair, she motioned with her mouth to Yumi, asking her to come. I mean, she moved her mouth in such a way, asking servant Yumi to come with her. I will put the baby to bed, Yumi replied. He is ready. So Yumi replied that the baby was ready for sleep and that she must put it to sleep before accompanying her. Then she went with Yumi into the bedroom next to the nursery and stood with the boy in her arms while Yumi spread the sleeping quilts on the floor and laid the baby between them. So Hannah, since Yumi said that the baby was ready for sleep, Hannah held the baby and went to the bedroom next to the nursery with Yumi. Yumi spread the sleeping quilts on the floor and laid the baby between them. Then Hannah led the way quickly and softly to the kitchen. The two servants were frightened at what their master had just told them. The old gardener, who was also a house servant, pulled the few hairs on his upper lip. So Hannah, she led the way as they walked fast towards the kitchen, both Hannah and Yumi. The two servants in the kitchen, they were scared after hearing their master's words regarding the injured man. The old gardener, who also worked as a servant, was pondering over the news and pulling the hair from his upper lip, means he was in deep thought. The master ought not to heal the wound of this white man, he said bluntly in a straight manner to Hannah. The white man ought to die. First he was shot, then the sea caught him and wounded him with her rocks. Now, if the master heals what the gun did and what the sea did, they will take revenge on us. The old gardener, he spoke bluntly to Hannah. He said that Sadao must not treat the injured white man. He reasoned that the man was destined to die, means he gave his own explanation that why the old injured man should not be treated, should not be given medical care, because he was destined to die, means his fate was that he should die. Firstly, he had been wounded by a gunshot, and secondly, the rocks of the sea wounded him further. Now, if Sadao healed the wounds given by the gun and the sea, then the gun and the sea would treat them as enemies and seek revenge. The gun represents the Japanese army, and the sea represents the country of Japan. And if they treated the enemy, they would be punished by Japan. I hope this line is understood by you. So, gunshot and the sea, they have metaphorical meanings over here. Gunshot is Japanese army, and the sea is country of Japan. So, specifically means the family will be punished by Japan for being a traitor. I will tell him what you say, Hannah replied courteously, means politely she replied to the old servant that she will convey his message to her husband. But she herself was also frightened, although she was not superstitious as the old man was, because the way the old man said that the gunshot will take revenge, the sea will take revenge, these were all superstitious things, and Hannah did not believe in all these things. But still, she says that could it ever be well to help an enemy? Means, will it be right to help an enemy? Nevertheless, she told Yumi to fetch the hot water and bring it to the room where the white man was. So, as I said, Hannah politely said to the gardener that she would pass his message to Sadao. She herself was frightened, though not superstitious like the old man. She thought that helping an enemy could never be good for them. Still, she asked Yumi to get hot water into the room where the injured man was kept. She went ahead and slid back the partitions. Sadao was not yet there. Yumi, following, put down her wooden bucket. Then she went over to the white man. When she saw him, her thick lips folded themselves into stubbornness. I have never washed a white man, she said. I will not wash so dirty a one now. So Hannah and Yumi, they went inside the injured man's room. Hannah, she went inside first and moved the partition to one side. Sadao was not there. Yumi followed her and kept the wooden bucket on the floor. As she saw the white man, her thick lips folded and the expressions on her face indicated her determination. What was her determination? She said firmly that she had never washed an American man and that she would never wash one who was as dirty as that injured man. Hannah cried at her severely, means seriously, you will do what your master commands you. So Hannah, she reacted to Yumi's refusal and she screamed at her that she was supposed to follow her master's orders. There was no fierce a look of resistance upon Yumi's round, dull face that Hannah felt unreasonably afraid. After all, if the servant should report something that was not as it happened. So Yumi, she resisted strongly, means she refused it. Her dull face, it had a dangerous look of protest which scared Hannah. Hannah was worried that if the servants reported something different from what had happened, they could land into trouble. Very well, she said with dignity, means respect. You understand, we only want to bring him to his senses so that we can turn him over as a prisoner. So now Hannah, she changed her expressions to respect and said, very well. She explained to Yumi that they intended to bring the unconscious man into his senses and then they would hand him over as a prisoner. I will have nothing to do with it, Yumi said. I am a poor person and it is not my business. So Yumi said that she was not concerned about their plans. She added that she was a poor person and it was none of her business to know about their plans. Then please, Hannah said gently, return to your work. At once, Yumi left the room, but this left Hannah with the white man alone. She might have been too afraid to stay had not her anger at Yumi's stubbornness now sustained her. So Hannah, she said to Yumi that then she should return to her work, and Yumi left the room at once. Hannah was again left alone with the white man. She would have been afraid to remain there all alone, but her anger on Yumi's firm determination made her stay in the room. Means before also she felt afraid being alone with the injured man in the room. But this time, uh, because of her anger on Yumi's refusal, it made her stay in the room. Stupid Yumi, she muttered fiercely. Is this anything but a man, and a wounded, helpless man? So Hannah said with anger that Yumi was a stupid person. She said that it was just an injured man. In the conviction of her own superiority, she bent impulsively and untied the knotted rugs that kept the white man covered. When she had his breast bare, she dipped the small clean towel that Yumi had brought into the steaming hot water and washed his face carefully. The man's skin, though rough and with exposure, was of a fine texture and must have been very blond when he was a child. So, conviction means firm belief, superiority means supremacy, impulsively to do something suddenly without thinking. Rugs means blanket, blonde of light yellow brown color. So Hannah was full of anger at the refusal of the maid Yumi, that without thinking she opened the blanket uh, in which the man was injured. His chest was bare. Hannah took a small clean towel, dipped it in the steaming hot water, and washed his face. The man's skin was rough due to being exposed to the sun, but it had a good texture, a fine texture, and he must have been very fair as a child. So the white man, he had a light yellow brown color, and as a child he must have been very fair at, but presently his skin was rough because he was exposed to sun. So all this Hannah saw when she washed his face with the hot water. While she was thinking these thoughts, though not really liking the man better now that he was no longer a child, she kept on washing him until his upper body was quite clean. But she dared not turn him over. Where was Sadao? Now her anger was ebbing. Ebbing means decreasing gradually, and she was anxious again, and she rose, wiping her hands on the wrong towel. Then, lest the man be chilled, she put the quilt over him. So Hannah, she kept on cleaning the man's upper body as she had these thoughts. She did not like the man as he was not a child any more. She did not have the courage to turn him over and thought of Sadao. Her anger was decreasing and she started becoming restless. She stood up and wiped her hands with the wrong towel. As she did not want the man to freeze due to the cold weather, she put the quilt on him. Sadao, she called softly. He had been about to come in when she called. His hands had been on the door and now he opened it. She saw that he had brought his surgeon's emergency bag and that he wore his surgeon's coat. So Hannah here, she called out to Sadao softly. Sadao, he had been on the door when she called him. He opened the door. Hannah saw that Sadao was carrying his surgeon's emergency bag and was wearing his surgeon's coat. He was prepared to operate upon the injured man. Let us stop here. We'll continue in the next video. Thank you.